Hey everyone, we are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Did you just see that? Did you see that? A quarterback, rolling to his right off his back foot, throwing a jump pass dart 67 yards through the air, in the wind, in May, at a practice that does not count for a single thing in the standings, and it lands perfectly in the basket. I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now. Put the phone down, put the remote down. If you are behind the wheel of a vehicle, I am begging you to pull over, because I am not legally responsible for what is about to happen to you. I'm Fave. This is Favs. And baby, Chicago is cooped, and I mean that in the most beautiful, most dangerous, most exciting way possible. The Bears have been quietly building something terrifying all off-season long, and the rest of the NFL is starting to catch the scent drifting out of Lake Forest, Illinois, and they do not like it one bit. Now here's the thing, that 67-yard rope to Rome Odunze? Absolutely insane. But that is not even the headline today. That is the opening act. The main event, the thing that has me personally vibrating at a frequency that my family is genuinely concerned about, is a 22-year-old kid from Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, who ran a 4.28 40-yard dash at the Combine, who came off the board in the third round of the 2026 NFL Draft at pick 89, who every draft analyst on television and radio called a reach the moment his name was announced, who is now showing up to organize team activities and putting on a performance so good that veteran reporters covering this team are handing out A-plus grades before the calendar even flips to June. His name is Xavon Thomas, and if you are sleeping on what is happening with this kid right now, this video is your wake-up call. Let's go all the way back to the draft, because context is everything, and you need to understand the full scope of the gamble the Chicago Bears made. Coming into the 2026 NFL Draft, the loudest conversation around this team, and I mean the loudest, most unavoidable, talked about on every podcast and radio show conversation, was about the defensive line. The Bears had needs there, real needs, legitimate needs that fans and analysts have been documenting for months. So when Ben Johnson and general manager Ryan Poles sat at that draft table and used a third-round pick on a wide receiver, the reaction from the outside world was swift, and it was not kind. Analysts said the Bears reached by at least a round. People pointed to the defensive line and asked what the front office was thinking. They called it a luxury pick. They called it reckless. They said the Bears ignored the most urgent need on their roster to take a gadget player they could have had on day 3. And Fave's honest personal opinion in that moment? I got it. I understood the frustration. When your roof is leaking, you do not spend your renovation budget on new curtains. Using a premium third-round selection on a skill player when your defensive line is a documented vulnerability looks, on the surface, like exactly the wrong call. The criticism made logical sense. But here is the thing that the critics fundamentally could not account for. Ben Johnson does not simply draft players. Ben Johnson drafts entire offensive systems built around the specific traits of specific human beings. He drafts mismatches that have not yet been invented. He sees a player and his brain immediately starts constructing the play design that turns that player into a nightmare for defensive coordinators, who will spend the entire week before a game trying to figure out how to stop him. And reports that came out during draft weekend made it undeniably clear that this was not a passive, shrug-and-take-the-best-available selection. According to reporters covering the Bears' war room during the draft, Johnson was so locked in on Xavon Thomas that he was literally drawing up plays at the draft table while the team waited for the pick to come in. Drawing up plays. Before the selection was even official, before Thomas had signed a single piece of paper. That detail should tell you everything about how intentional and how premeditated this decision was. Ben Johnson did not stumble onto Xavon Thomas. He hunted him down. So who exactly is Xavon Thomas, and why is Ben Johnson this excited? Because if you only know the surface-level story, fast receiver, return specialist, third-round pick, you are massively underselling what this kid actually is. Thomas is a product of John Ehret High School in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, where he was an absolute terror as a multi-purpose weapon. He went on to play college football at Mississippi State before transferring to LSU. And by the time his college career was finished, he had racked up 106 catches for over 1,200 receiving yards across 4 seasons. But here is the number that most people in the national conversation glossed, right over. Thomas also accumulated 40 rushing carries during his college career. 40 carries! As a wide receiver, meaning that nearly 1/3 of all his offensive touches in college came via the run game, out of the backfield, between the tackles, taking handoffs like a running back. He did not just line up out wide and run-go routes. He lined up at running back. He ran sweeps. He took direct snaps. He worked inside the numbers, outside the numbers, and everywhere in between. He returned 60 punts and 35 kickoffs during his college career. The man is not a position. He's a concept. And Thomas himself has been completely open about how natural the running back role feels to him. He has said publicly that he feels absolutely comfortable taking handoffs and running between the tackles. That is not a receiver saying what coaches want to hear. That is a player who genuinely has those instincts baked into his game from years of doing it at a high level. An offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, addressed this directly after Thomas was drafted, and what Taylor said was not the usual sanitized coach speak you get from NFL staffs in the spring. Taylor specifically said that the first thing that jumps off the tape when you watch Thomas is the speed element. But then he went further. He talked about Thomas's variety of experience, lining up at running back, taking handoffs, working inside the numbers, playing on the edge. Taylor explicitly compared Thomas's versatility to the role DJ Moore played under Ben Johnson in Detroit, where Moore took a significant number of snaps out of the backfield and turned them into explosive defense-breaking plays. And Taylor's conclusion was simple. You see the speed, and you see the complementary dimension of what Thomas could potentially be for this offense. That is an offensive coordinator telling you in the most professional language available to him that this kid is about to be a problem. Now let me tell you what happened when Thomas showed up to OTAs, because this is the part of the story where theory becomes reality and skeptics have to start reckoning with the evidence. Practice 2 of the Bears' organized team activities. Veteran Bears reporter Mark Carman, who has covered this franchise daily for years and has seen more Bears practices than most fans have seen games, was on the sideline watching. And Carman came away from that practice and publicly labeled Xavon Thomas the star of the day. Not Luther Burden II, who is an already established talent heading into his second NFL season. Not Rome Odunze, who caught a 67-yard touchdown in that same practice week. The rookie, the third-round reach. The big gamble? Carman awarded him an A-plus grade and described the specific play that earned it. Caleb Williams loading up and launching a missile more than 50 yards down the left sideline. Thomas running against veteran cornerback Tyreek Stevenson, a first-team defensive back. Turned on that extra gear, the gear that only a 4.28 man possesses, blew past Stevenson like the cornerback was a traffic cone, tight-roped the sideline, and pulled the ball in as casually as if it were a 2-yard screen pass in garbage time. When the Bears' social media team eventually posted the footage, it was every bit as jaw-dropping as the report suggested. You could see the exact moment Thomas shifted into that top gear, and the gap between him and Stevenson just evaporated. Gone, done. Catch, touchdown. Next play? And Fave's personal take on that play? Tyreek Stevenson is not slow. Let's be very clear about that. This is not Thomas burning some undrafted rookie who has no business being on an NFL field. This is a veteran corner being cooked in open space by a man whose legs simply operate at a different speed than most human beings on this planet. What you are watching in that clip is not an anomaly. That is the 4.2840 translating directly to the football field, which, by the way, does not always happen. Speed at the combine does not automatically mean speed that shows up and changes games in pads, but with Thomas, it translates. It is real, it is violent, and Caleb Williams now has a weapon he can throw to anywhere on the field from basically any arm angle, which brings me to the other moment from this practice week that has the entire football world talking. The 67-yard throw, let me describe it so you can picture exactly what happened. Caleb Williams is in an 11-on-11 drill. A defender comes free and forces Williams out of the pocket. He rolls to his right, away from Rome Odunze, who is running a route down the opposite side of the field. Williams, off balance on the run, off his back foot, torques his entire upper body and unleashes a throw. 67 yards in the air. The ball comes down perfectly in stride to Odunze for a touchdown. Backup quarterback Case Keenum, who was watching from the sideline, later confirmed publicly that the throw traveled 67 yards through the air. 67 air yards, rolling away from his target, off his back foot, in the wind. Veteran Bears insider Brad Biggs, who has covered this franchise through decades of mediocrity and heartbreak, and has earned the right to be measured and careful with his words, came away from that practice and said that Williams' ability to drive a football downfield from basically any arm angle is absolutely jaw-dropping. When Brad Biggs says jaw-dropping, you stop and you listen. Luther Burden II spoke about the play afterward and made a point of saying that the Bears have been spending significant time during spring practices working specifically on scramble drill situations, broken plays where the quarterback escapes pressure and the receivers have to improvise routes in real time. That is not a coincidence. That is a coaching staff that watched film on year one of this offense, identified the moments where Caleb Williams' absurd athletic ability was being underutilized or left on the table, and deliberately built practice reps to weaponize those moments in year 2. The coaching staff is not just tolerating Williams running around and making magic. They are teaching it. They are scripting it. They are building an entire layer of this offense around the fact that their quarterback can throw a 67-yard dart while falling away from the throw off his back foot in May, with a defender in his face. Now let's talk about the depth chart reality, because I want to be fair and balanced here, even though every instinct in my body is screaming to just hype this kid into the stratosphere. Xavon Thomas is not walking into Week 1 of the 2026 NFL season as the starting number 1 or number 2 receiver on this football team. That would be getting way too far ahead of things. Rome Odunze is developing into a legitimate alpha receiver and is building one of the most exciting quarterback-receiver connections in football with Caleb Williams. Luther Burden has Ben Johnson personally buying his stock and raving about his offseason approach. DeAndre Swift is catching bombs out of the backfield. This offense is genuinely loaded. Thomas is going to have to compete hard for the number 3 receiver spot, and he is going to be fighting for that spot against Khalif Raymond, who, by the way, also runs a 4.28 40-yard dash. Yes, the Bears now have 2 4.28 men on their roster. Thank you, Detroit Lions. Thank you sincerely for keeping the wrong coach and sending us gifts. But here is what I need you to understand about that number 3 receiver role in Ben Johnson's offensive system. It is not a consolation prize. It is not a quiet corner of the playbook where someone goes to disappear. When you are the third option in an offense where defenses have to account for Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, DeAndre Swift, and a quarterback who just threw a 67-yard touchdown in a light spring practice, you are getting single coverage. You are getting matchups against linebackers who have no business being on the same field as a 4.28 receiver. You are getting safety help that has been pulled away by everything else happening around you. And when Ben Johnson, who was literally drawing up plays for this specific person before the draft pick was even officially announced, schemes Thomas into those mismatches, the highlight reel is going to write itself. General Manager Ryan Poles spoke about this publicly and gave an honest, measured assessment that I actually have a lot of respect for. Poles acknowledged that this is a complex offensive system. He said it will be a challenge for Thomas to break through quickly. He said the role might start small and grow over time. But then he added the line that matters most. He said he does not want to put a cap on what is possible if Thomas downloads the playbook fast, and that the Bears are going to find a way to get the best players into the best positions to succeed. That is a general manager leaving a door completely wide open. That is Ryan Poles essentially telling you in professional language that if this kid keeps performing the way he is performing at OTAs, the depth chart is just a piece of paper and it can be rewritten at any time. And right now, 2 practices into the entire offseason program, Thomas is already making the argument. And then there is the return game, which is somehow not getting nearly enough attention in the middle of all this offensive excitement. Special teams coordinator Hightower spoke publicly about Thomas during OTA week, and what he said went far beyond the standard, safe, boring talking points coaches give about return specialists in the spring. Hightower specifically highlighted Thomas's natural instincts, his ability to catch the football in traffic, and his fearlessness. Those 3 traits, in that order, are precisely what separates a good return man from a great one. Speed is common enough at the NFL level. Instincts, knowing which crease to attack, when to cut back, when to go north and south, that is rarer. Catching in traffic means you do not flinch when a gunner is flying at your face full speed. And fearlessness means every single return gets attacked like it might go all the way. Hightower made clear this is a dynamic player who excites them on special teams just as much as he excites the offensive staff. The context around that matters enormously. The Bears had Devin Duvernay handling return duties last year, and by most accounts, Duvernay looked like a player whose best days were behind him. He had earned 2 Pro Bowl selections and an All-Pro nod during his peak years, but the juice that made him dangerous in the return game was simply not showing up anymore. He did not take a single return to the house all season. The Bears special teams unit has actually been very good at blocking. The infrastructure to spring a return man has been there, but they needed someone with the explosive finishing speed to make those blocks count. Xavon Thomas, with 60 college punt returns and 35 kickoff returns on his resume, is that guy. He has done it at a high level for years. He has the instincts, he has the fearlessness, and he has the 4.28 speed to turn a good block into a 6-point swing. Now let me come back to the detail about Xavon Thomas's mindset that I simply cannot stop thinking about. Special teams coordinator Hightower shared that one of the very first questions Thomas asked him after joining the team was this: "Coach, why do most rookies fail in the NFL? What is it that holds people back?" Read that question again and really think about what it tells you about this kid's internal operating system. He is 22 years old, He has just been drafted by a franchise that is building toward a Super Bowl. He is living the moment every young football player dreams about their entire childhood. And instead of showing up with ego, with assumptions, with the belief that he has already figured it all out, he walks up to a veteran NFL coordinator on his first days with the team and asks to understand the failure modes before he has even had a chance to fail. That is not normal. That is not a conversation most rookies are having in May. Hightower said that one question told him everything he needed to know about Thomas's mindset. And Fave's opinion? A player who asks that question at 22 years old is a player who has already decided that he is not going to be a cautionary tale. That is a different breed. And let's zoom out and look at the full picture here, because this moment in Chicago Bears history deserves that perspective. We have had the same conversation about Ben Johnson's picks before. Last year, people questioned taking Luther Burden in the second round. People questioned selecting Colston Loveland in the first round instead of going with the player the Indianapolis Colts selected. And every single time, the answer has come back the same way. Trust the coach. Let him cook. Ben Johnson has a vision for this offense that operates on a level most people in the outside conversation cannot fully access, and his track record of turning draft picks into chess pieces that break defenses is undeniable. The Detroit Lions made the decision to keep a different coach, and the Chicago Bears have been the primary beneficiary of that choice ever since. Fave's bottom line, and I want to be as clear as I have ever been on this channel, Caleb Williams is going to be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. I believe that completely. The list of quarterbacks alive who can execute a 67-yard throw off their back foot while rolling out of the pocket away from the target, under pressure, and still hit the receiver in perfect stride for a touchdown. That list is very, very short. It is not luck. It is not a one-time moment that will never happen again. It is a skill set that Williams has been building since before he ever set foot on a college campus. And Ben Johnson's system is built specifically to let it breathe. Add an offensive line that should be one of the best in the entire league in 2026. Add Rome Odunze, ascending into a true number 1 threat. Add Luther Burden with a full offseason of development. Add DeAndre Swift as a receiving weapon out of the backfield. And now, add Xavon Thomas, the 4.28 speedster, the running back disguised as a receiver, the return specialist, the kid who asks his coaches why rookies fail because he has already decided that is not going to be his story. The gamble was real. Nobody is going to pretend it was not. Picking Xavon Thomas in the 3rd round over a defensive lineman, when the defensive line was the loudest need on this roster, required genuine trust. It required trust in Ben Johnson's vision. It required trust in the existing defensive personnel to hold the line without additional investment. It required trust that a kid from Louisiana with elite speed and a running back's instincts could become a multidimensional offensive weapon in one of the most complex systems in the NFL. That trust, based on everything we are watching in these early June practices of 2026, is already being repaid. Thomas is not a project. He is not a developmental piece that might contribute in year 2 or 3. He is a finished product walking in the door 2 practices deep into his NFL career and making veteran first-team defenders look slow. This is Chicago. This is what bear down actually feels like. This is an offense with no ceiling, a head coach with no fear, a quarterback with no peer, and a fan base that has been waiting most of its lifetime for a reason to feel this way about football in this city. We are here, and we are just getting started. If you made it to the very end of this video, first of all, respect. You are a real one. Now do 3 things before you go anywhere. Smash that like button right now. Do not think about it. Just do it. It takes 1 second, and it means everything to this channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know, do you think Xavon Thomas breaks into the starting lineup before the end of the 2026 season? Is he a number 2 receiver waiting to happen? Can he challenge Rome Odunze for targets by October? Tell me everything. And if you are not already subscribed to Favs, what are you even doing with your life? Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and come back tomorrow, because we are just warming up. The season has not even started, and Chicago is already giving us everything we need. Bear down. See you tomorrow.